I'm not sure. Okay, I'm in now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. This is the second class from our life of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So just a little real brief recap. Who remembers the name of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's father?
Was it Abdullah?
Abdullah. Now, what's his mother's name?
Aisha?
Yeah, no.
Khadija?
The name of his wives though. What was the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's mother name?
I don't know.
It was Amina. Amina, or as we say, Amina. Amina, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's wife name was Amina. I mean, his mother's name was Amina. All right. Uh, what was the name that Allah Ta'ala, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's name was mentioned in the Quran? What was his name? Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, right? What was his name in the Injil?
Ahmed.
No. That's what said. What was his name in the Torah?
Still.
Uhid.
Uhid.
Right.
Say it again.
Uhid. Like, Tawheed. So just say Uhid instead of Tawheed. Uhid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his name, he was called Uhid because he said, I direct my nation away from the fire, from the hellfire. That's why he said his name was Ohid. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What day was the Prophet Sallallahu born?
The elephant.
Yeah. No, that was
the year the elephant.
On a Monday? On a Monday, right.
Yeah.
When did he die?
On a Tuesday? On a
Monday. On a Monday. Right. Okay, so we stopped there. He was born in the year of the elephant, but what is meant by this is 30 years after the event of the year of the elephant. All right. So everybody remember that. It's good you say the year of the elephant, right? That's like a marker. But remember, your minds are young and fresh enough, right? To understand that it's 30 years after the year of the elephant. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just make sure. Uh, yeah. What's more sound is known as the year of the elephant is 30 years afterwards. And the month the Prophet Sallallahu was born in was the month of Rabiul Awwal. All right. Try to remember that. Now the Prophet Sallallahu died on a Monday. And he died 12 nights to the 12th night of Rabiul Awwal. He died in the month of Rabiul Awwal. So he's born on a Monday, died on a Monday, born in the month of Rabiul Awwal and died in the month of Rabiul Awwal. Mm-hmm. What's the coincidence of that? All right. Imagine you die on your birthday, right? Or your birth month. All right. Mm-hmm. So anyway, when the Prophet ﷺ he was buried on a Tuesday. All right. And it's going to describe the event of what's happening here. All right. Y'all should start bringing pencils and pens with y'all to write down notes. Because get into the habit of that when you're dealing with the life of the Prophet ﷺ and hadith in general, because this is also hadith, a form of hadith. You want to write down, you want to be particular about what you know about the Prophet ﷺ, right? So you always want to know names, dates, and places, right? And then what happened, name, dates, and places. If it's mentioned, you usually got a name there. Who's telling you, who's narrating this, right? Who's involved? Who were the people involved? If there was a dialogue that took place, right? Names, places. Where did this take place at? Right? What was the event? What happened? What occurred? Right? That's usually what you find in the hadiths of the Prophet Sallallahu. You find names, dates, and places. Names, dates, and places. You'll never forget that. In history, it's always name, dates, and places. Right? Like for instance, when is Christmas?
December 25th.
On December 25th, right? What do everybody believe about December 25th?
How Easter was born?
They say what?
That's when Easter was born?
That's when they believe Jesus was born, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if y'all know all this because y'all ain't Christian and y'all ain't grow up. with any type of Christianity, but you might have heard it from somewhere. Where did they believe that the birthplace of Jesus was?
In the church.
Nah, not church. Called place called Bethlehem. So there's a name, date, and place behind that. Then they start talking about the events. They'll give you the religious event, right? Um, when did America gain its independence?
July 4th.
July 4th, right? That's the date, right? What's the event?
Independence Day.
Independence. What independence day from what?
America.
America was independent from what?
I don't know the right.
Well, you should know you should know your opponent's history. But the independence from Britain, right?
Thinking that.
That was their adversary. That's who they were breaking away from, right? So name, dates, and places. Who's the first president?
George Washington.
There you go. You see what I'm saying? Names, dates, and places. So the only difference is you're not citing your source where you get it from, right? This is important because this tells you how to approach Islam. Actually, Islam tells you how to approach the world, especially in academics and learning. All right. So the Prophet ﷺ was born on what day?
Monday.
What year?
Yeah, we all. The year of the elephant.
No, that was a month.
The year of the elephant.
The year of the elephant. Approximately about how long?
30 years.
30 years afterwards. But to say that the year of the elephant is usually sufficient, that's what most people will, identify with. But, you may know that a little bit more detailed information 30 years afterwards. All right. So he was born on Monday. When did he die?
On a Monday.
When was he buried?
When?
On a yeah. What day was he buried?
Ramadan.
Now you're just guessing. I just told you.
On Monday.
On a Tuesday. He was born. He was buried on a Tuesday at Mulberry, right? So that means that they still prayed for him because our day starts not at midnight; it starts at Mulberry. So you would consider like today is Jumu'ah, right? But it won't be considered Jumu'ah after Mulberry. You see what I'm saying? We don't do the 12 o'clock midnight business. After Mulberry, the new day starts. Now, so they say he was 63 years old when he passed. All right. Now, you will hear some people, if you sat in other circles, right? Circles and heard people teaching, you will hear some people say that he was 65 or he was 60 years old even. But the more correct opinion is that he was 63. What month was he born in?
Rabi'ah.
What month did he die in?
Rabi'ah.
Now, so some other events. All right. The Prophet ﷺ born on a Monday. He also became a prophet on a Monday. He made the hijrah from Mecca to Medina on a Monday, right? He got to Medina on a Monday and he died on a Monday, right? So it tells you that there's some kind of blessings and barakah with Mondays, right?
Mm-hmm.
We hate Mondays. You ever notice that? The culture here, it hates Mondays. Everybody be like, tomorrow's Monday. Usually Monday signifies the beginning of the work week. That's why everybody hates it. But we probably should begin to love Mondays because our Prophet son was born on a Monday, died on a Monday, made Hijrah on a Monday, became a prophet on a Monday. Everything happened on a Monday, right? And it also makes sense on why Monday is a very popular day to fast. You see what I'm saying? So anyway, it was reported that this is one of the uh, things that are considered miraculous about the Prophet son. Well, you know what? I'm gonna leave this alone because I'm reading here that Imam Ibn Jawzi, he said that this hadith isn't isn't sound, but Imam Nawawi quotes it. But I'm gonna leave it be. I'm not gonna mention it. They said the Prophet ﷺ, they give him a description of when he died. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ was wrapped in his sheets, because when we die, we don't get put in a casket. We get shrouded, wrapped up. He's placed on his bed at the edge of his grave. And then the people will come in group by group praying, the janazah prayer, right? With none of them leading it. They came in and everybody prayed individually. So the first group to pray, the first person to pray on the Prophet ﷺ was Al Abbas, right? They y'all playing footsie, man. Mm-hmm. All right. I see y'all rubbing each other's toes and stuff. Or was you trying to hit the fly? Yeah, so. Because I was just about to smack myself just a second ago. Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, what's going on? Abbas was his uncle. Then Bani Hashim, that was the clan of the Prophet ﷺ. Then the Muhajirin. Now, the Muhajirin, right? Those chill. They're doing look crazy. The Muhajirin, right? They were the people who left from Mecca with the Prophet ﷺ and went to Medina. Okay? That's what they call the Muhajirin, the people who made Hijrah, right? The Ansar was the people in Medina who aided and assisted the Prophet ﷺ and also assisted the people that was with the Prophet ﷺ. Ansar means helper, okay? Muhajirin means the person who migrated, who traveled, right? He said after the Ansar, then everybody else. So his uncle, then Bani Hashim, those from Bani Hashim that was Muslim, that was his clan, right? Then after that, the Muhajirin, that includes Umar, Abu Bakr, Aisha, Hafsa, and all of them who were mentioned. They made Hijrah to Medina, and then the Ansar, who were the helpers of the people who made Hijrah and the helpers of the Prophet ﷺ, and then everybody else after that. And when the men finished, the children came in and prayed for the Prophet ﷺ. After the children finished praying, the women will come in and pray for the Prophet ﷺ. And then he was buried in Al Abbas, Ali, Fadl, and Qutham, the two sons of Abbas, and Sukran lowered him, put him into the ground. And it was also said that Osama ibn Zayd and Aus ibn Khawla, I'm sorry, were also amongst them. He was buried in the Lahad. Lahad, I believe this word is. It's like, and then there, and they said that like some brick. It was made of brick and it was constructed where on top, were on top of him, and it is said that 9 bricks were laid there. Then the soil was thrown on top of that, and then his grave was flattened. Right, and so then they also sprinkled water over the grave. And according to Imam Al Hakim, he said it is said that Mughira descended into his grave, but this is not authentic, right? So you may hear this in your studies because what scholars do is they also teach you and tell you that something may be authentic. Right now, y'all at the level of you just learning, right? But in the future, you'll graduate from not just learning, but inshallah, becoming a researcher and a versifier, a person who research and also authenticate information, of Islam as well. When people will come to you, for authentication, and you're only going to regurgitate, you're only going to say the same thing that other scholars have said, right? And you'll do your research by connecting chains and things of that nature. So you got a long line of studying ahead of you. You'll never, until death reaches you, you'll never ever complete studying Islam. Your completion of studying Islam, or some people be looking for graduation and all of that stuff. You graduate when you die and get the Jannah. That's your graduation date. No. So anyway, so it said that the father, Abdullah, the father of the Prophet ﷺ, died when the Prophet ﷺ was only 28 months old. How old is 28 months old? I always hate when people be like, how old is he? 28 months? 2 years and what? 2 years and a quarter. Because 2 years and a half
2 years
will be 30 months, right? 2 years and a half. Think about it. 24 months is 2 years, and 6 months is a half a year. So he said the Prophet Prophet's father died when he was about 2 years, 2 years. We'll say that. That's sufficient. They said that it was also after he was 9 months, 7 months, 8 months, and he was not born yet. Some say this, that this was the case. They said he died away in Medina, meaning the Prophet Prophet's father died in Medina. Waqidi and his scribe Muhammad ibn Sa'id both said it is not established that the Prophet ﷺ died. Uh, that was not established that he passed away. That the Prophet ﷺ's father passed away when he was not born yet. So they're saying that if you hear those reports that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't even born, but Abdullah died, according to Muhammad ibn Sa'id in Waqidi, they're saying that the Prophet, this isn't authentic to say the Prophet ﷺ wasn't born when his father died. His grandfather Abdul Muttalib died when he was 8 years old. Right, so Abdullah's father, his name was Abdul Muttalib, and he died when the Prophet ﷺ was 8, because when he died, the grandfather took over. Right, like meaning y'all, yeah, my sons, if y'all died and I'm still alive, right, I would look after the children, because that's how Islam is set up. The men take care of the family, right? The burden is never, as much as possible. You never leave that burden on women, right? It always falls on the man. The man always got to be ready to step up, right? So anyway, uh, the mother of the Prophet Sallallahu, uh, what was her name again? Amina. Amina. Amina, or Amina, as we say, right? Amina passed away when he was 6 years old, but this is also mentioned that he was 4 years old at Al Abwa, right? A place falling between Mecca and Medina. Now, this is funny that I mentioned at Abwa, because me and my wife was having a conversation about this last night about Abwa. We'll talk about this offline. He was he became a prophet, so he became a prophet to all of mankind when he was 40 years old. Don't forget that. All right, he was 40 years old when the Prophet ﷺ became a prophet. So he had life before he was a prophet, and like I mentioned, that incident in the khutbah about the Prophet ﷺ's heart, being open and the angel cleaned it. Right. This was during the when the Prophet ﷺ was a young boy. All right. After receiving prophethood, after becoming a messenger, a prophet, he remained in Mecca for, hold on, 13 years. He remained in Mecca for 13 years, right? However, there's information out there saying that he stayed for 10, some saying he stayed for 15. What we know that's authentic is 13 years. Then the Prophet ﷺ made hijrah to Medina, and he stayed in Medina for 10 years. And there's no disagreement with regards to how long the Prophet ﷺ lived in Medina. Because when he moved, he never left Medina. He died in Medina. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He arrived in Medina on a Monday after Rabi al-Awwal, on a Monday, and after the 12th night of Rabi al-Awwal, he died there. And the Imam al-Hakim, he said the Messenger of Allah sallallahu pain uh, commenced and subsided while his pain started while he was in Maymuna's house. Maymuna was one of his wives. All right. And this happened on a Wednesday, with 2 nights remaining left in the month of Safar. All right. You see how detailed it is? Mm-hmm. Now, who knows what a wet nurse is? Y'all know what a wet nurse is? Mm-hmm. All right. The Islamic definition of a foster mother is your wet nurse. If the woman that's your wet nurse, she has children, her children are like your sisters and brothers. Like literally. right? Even if y'all don't have the same father or the same mother. A wet nurse is a woman that nurses, that breastfeeds the child, but she's not the mother of that child. Usually the parents pay her to nurse the child. There was never no such thing as formula. All right. There was no formula, Similac, none of that stuff. It was breast milk, right? And so, for whatever reason, the woman may have been, I don't know, working, maybe couldn't produce a lot of breast milk, or died. You would take her to the wet nurse, and that would be their occupation. They would nurse. They still have them today, but everything that we do today is inside of a laboratory or some kind of, something connected with a hospital, right? Uh, my son Uthman, you know, they when I went to go to check on him when he was first born, they were asking me, was he going to get breast milk? So at first, I thought they were talking about from his mother. I was like, yeah, absolutely. But they said, well, we have breast milk on storage if you need it, right? Because people pump their breast milk and then sell it back to the hospital. That's their method of today's method of them wet nursing. The problem with Muslims accepting that breast milk, we don't know what that person be feeding. That person could be a kafir. That person could eat pork. Because whatever you ingest, that's what you're giving the child, right? There's certain medications you can't take and breastfeed at the same time. Because that child will get that medication and whatever side effect that you will receive as the wet nurse, the wet nurse, as the woman nursing, that child can receive that as well. So y'all understand what I'm talking about now? Yeah. That's what a wet nurse is, right? And so they had this. This was very common, you know. So the Prophet Sallallahu, his first wet nurse was Thuwayba, right? She was the freed slave of Abu Lahab. And don't forget his name. You'll later on find out what's up with him, right? Matter of fact, there's a surah in the Quran where Allah Ta'ala was basically cursing Abu Lahab. You know that surah? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبت يدا أبي لهب وتب. Who know that surah? You know that surah? That's Abu Lahab, right? This woman, Thuwayba, was a freed slave of Abu Lahab. She nursed the Prophet ﷺ for some days. He was also nursed by Halima bintu Abu Du'aib, Abdullah ibn Harith as-Sa'di. It has also been reported from her that she said he would age in one day what another child would do in a month. So in one day, the Prophet ﷺ would accomplish a lot that what another infant it'd take them a month to do as a child. His upbringing, he grew up as an orphan because both his parents are dead at this point, right? And he grew up as an orphan in the care of his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib. Remember that name. He's very, his name is important as well. Abdul Muttalib. Then after his death, because Abdul Muttalib died, right? Abdul, and also commit this to memory. And if you don't have it where you can write this down or type this in your phone and stuff, go back and watch the live video of this. Uh Abdul Muttalib's name, Abdul Muttalib's name is Shayba. Abdul Muttalib's name is Shayba. He been recognized as Abdul Muttalib because his father's name was Muttalib, and they thought because he was so dark skinned, they thought that was he was like the servant of Muttalib. All right, that's how he got the name Abdul Muttalib. His name is actually Shayba. Now, so after Abdul Muttalib died, his uncle Abu Talib took care of him. All right, remember that name too, Abu Talib, because as an uncle would do, even though he didn't embrace Islam, he fought to protect the Prophet ﷺ against the Quraysh. Because when we go into it, you'll start seeing that the Prophet ﷺ had beef with his own family, right? And some of his family protected him, and a lot of his family wanted to kill him because they wanted to worship the gods that they had. Because you have to understand that with the worshiping of different gods comes money, right? And when you mess with somebody's money, you mess with their God, you messing with their money, right? So you'll start seeing. Um, Abu Jahl was also related to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He was one of the main people that wanted to kill him, right? He organized in such a way with the assistance of Shaitan, where they tried to assassinate the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where they had a man from each clan to come in to try to stab the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in his sleep, so that when you stabbed him and killed him, they can't go to war with all the tribes, so everybody would just have to pay them blood money. That's how they were going to try to get him out of there, right? But when they got there to the house to go to stab him, they pulled the sheet back before they stabbed him, right? They found Ali ibn Abi Talib in the bed, cut him a lot of ways. So they never was able to kill him. So Abu Talib took over the care of the Prophet ﷺ after Abu Talib died. You see how tight knit the family is? Right? Learn this. Take this in, especially as men growing. Right? Family has to be tight. Everything is not meant to fall on the mother. It only falls on the mother if it has to. It ain't all the choice. But that is not the first line of work. We have to be different. We cannot be those type of men where we got babies and we just drop them off on mommy. Although that if you didn't have a wife and you had a child and from a divorce or the death, right, you would, also have your mom, rear the child while the child's young, right? However, we take responsibility of that. We're responsibility for their we're responsible for their education. We're responsible for them, in general. We don't just donate babies and just disappear as is a common practice in today's society. All right. Now, so anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purified the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from jahiliyyah. He never experienced he never worshipped the idol, right? Or none of these things. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it mentions in this book, but another one, there was an incident with the Prophet ﷺ that the youth, they used to have this thing where they used to run around the Kaaba naked, right? They would drink date wine and run around the Kaaba naked. I guess it was a their own variation of Freaknik or something like that. I don't know what's today's thing. I don't know. It's just weird today. But it had a little freak neat. You run around butt naked around the Kaaba, right? The Prophet Sallallahu he was a young boy. I think he was probably like late teens or in his early 20s. They said he was going to go, but he fell asleep and he couldn't go, and Allah protected him from that. You know what I mean? So he never had a jahiliyyah like a lot of people do. So he never worshipped any other idol or anything ever in his life. And neither did he ever attend any of the events of the disbelievers, even though they would ask him to go. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected, and preserved him from that. And it was in the hadith that was mentioned by Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have never worshipped an idol, neither have I ever drunk alcohol. I always knew that what they were upon was disbelief, right? And this is how pure you're supposed to be as a Muslim born child, right? You're supposed to know that what the disbelievers is upon is disbelief. So no Muslim child should grow up wanting to practice Christmas. No Muslim child should grow up wanting to practice Thanksgiving or Easter or any of these things like you find today's practice where you have Muslims that literally dress their children up and send them to church with grandma on Easter, right? We have to be like the Prophet says, never worship an idol, right? They said Ali ibn Abi Talib also was blessed not to worship an idol either. And that's why when his name is mentioned, so this is one report of when his name is mentioned, we say Karamallahu Wajh. May Allah Ta'ala ennoble his face, right? Because he never worshipped an idol either. And then also because the Khawarij used to say, may Allah blacken his face. In Ahl Sunnah, we say, may Allah Ta'ala enlighten his face, ennoble him, keep his face light. So anyway, from this great kindness that the Prophet sallallahu this kindness that Allah Ta'ala bestowed upon the Prophet sallallahu, he was free from the filth of Jahiliyyah, right? From every lowly trait, and Allah Ta'ala gifted him with very beautiful moral and mannerism to the point that people knew him as Al-Amin, that the Prophet sallallahu was truthful. Now, Al-Amin means truthful and trustworthy, right? Guess what Amina means? Or Amina. Guess what Amina means? Anyone want to guess?
Truthful and trustworthy.
The truthful female. His mother's name was Amina. One of his nicknames people called him, and this before he was even a prophet, they used to call him Al Amin, right? This is one of the things that you want to have. You want to have noble character to the point where a person can testify and can testify to your character. You know how people say your brand, you have to build your brand. Your brand is your character, your reputation, your word, right? And so you have to be a person. You don't want to be recognized as the people of Jahiliyyah recognized with foul mouths, right? Hint, hint, wink, wink. You don't want to be recognized with foul mouths, right? So you don't want to be recognized for bad characteristics, right? These are the things that you work on, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ said, I've been sent in order to rectify character. So anyway, this was due to the fact that he had witness of his trustworthiness and his truthful nature and his cleanliness from all impurity, that when he was 22 years old, he went to his uncle Abu Talib to Syria, where he reached Busra. And he came with the attention of Bahira. He came to the attention of Bahira. Bahira was a monk, and he recognized him for who he truly was, and thus his characteristics and description. And he came and he took hold of him by his hand. He took hold of the hand of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, هذا سيد العالمين, هذا رسول رب العالمين, هذا يبعثه الله حجة للعالمين. This man, Bahira, right? Remember that name, Bahira. He was a monk. When he seen and he met the Prophet ﷺ, Bahira, the monk, took the Prophet ﷺ by his hand, and he said that this is the master of all of mankind. He's a Sayyid. This is the messenger of the Lord of all of the worlds. He said this one has been sent by Allah as a manifest proof for all of the worlds. So at this time, the Prophet ﷺ was 22. How old was he when he became a prophet? 40, right? So that means he wasn't a prophet yet, because he didn't become a prophet until he was 40. So at 22, this man was a monk, meaning he was a person who was highly religious. He was a monk. And so he took and he seen him. He said, this man right here, he's a Sayyid. He's a master of all of humanity. He's a messenger to Allah. He's basically like a sign, and he's been sent to all of mankind. They asked Bahira, how did you come to know this? He replied, when you came from the mountain path, not a single tree or a rock remained except that it fell down in prostration. And they do not prostrate except to a prophet. And indeed, we found him to be mentioned in our book. He then asked Abu Talib to take him back for the fear of the Jews, right? Because they knew that he was a prophet. The Jews believed that there was no prophet after Prophet Musa. The Christians believe that there's no prophet after Prophet Isa, right? They would have killed the Prophet ﷺ had they known that he was who was mentioned in the what was he mentioned as? What was his name in the Injil? Huh? Ahmed. No. Ahmed. What was his name in the Torah? Ahmed. Wait. Hold up. Ohid. Ohid. Right? What did I go make it? Ohid. Right? So So now what does that mean? He was mentioned, right? So then they said, then he left for a second time for Syria, again, stopping at the marketplace of Busra. This time with Seerah, the servant of Khadija, radiallahu ta'ala anha, in order to make a trade on her behalf before he was married to her. And he married her at the age of 25, right? Now, when he left Medina, undertaking the hijrah, he was in the company of Abu Bakr Siddiq and his freed slave named Amir ibn Fuhaira. And the person who was their guide, like their GPS, his name was Abdullah ibn Urayqit al-Laythi, who he wasn't even Muslim. And it was not known whether or not he accepted Islam. So we'll stop there, inshallah, for this week. Next class, inshallah, we'll go into the description of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So remember that y'all got a lot to unpack there. Take the time to review, right? And I just want to say this before we close out. There's different methods of learning. There's different methods of learning. The first, foremost, the most superior method of learning is through memorization, right? The tools that utilize in order to memorize is, of course, your memory, a pen, paper, right? And nowadays, what's an extension of that? Recording devices, whether that be by video or audio, right? Video, audio would never be superior to pen and paper, but however, it's sufficient to help you to record with pen and paper as well, right? The barakah is in the actual physical sitting in front of one another and, getting a barakah for learning, right? So don't be discouraged by utilizing online methods of teaching and learning, right? It is a method, it is a gateway of learning. The universities are starting to somewhat dilapidate, collapse a little bit because one, the financial overhead, and number two, the way that they're cutting the cost of the financial overhead is that now they're using online learning and teaching. Now the thing is that you can't question what's online in person at real time. You have to type. So you also still have to use a method of recording and writing, right? Even though you're typing your questions and answers and things of that nature. So there's some levels of complications with the online methodology, but however, it's very minimum according, in comparison to the benefits, right? It's like the same thing with a pen or a pencil. The minor complications that you can have with a pen or a pencil is that the pencil point can break, right? And the pen can run out of ink. Okay? So you paying attention, Zubia? What did I say? You said the pen uh can break. I said the pen can break or the pencil? Pencil. The pencil. And pencil can break, and then what happened with the pen? It can run out of ink. Gotta pay attention, right? So don't feel, you gotta pay attention, to this, and don't feel that learning online doesn't have a place in learning, right? Because at the end of the day, the teacher's there to teach you, but you to continue, you're going to start learning and researching to continue to grow. And then when you don't know a thing, you do what Allah tell you in the Quran. فَأَسْلُ أَهْلِ ذِكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of the reminder if you don't know, right? So this is also a form of a command to go out and seek knowledge, but also when you don't know a thing, you also seek help in gaining that thing. So you'll always need a teacher, right? and you'll always need to write, and memorize, but you can also use, modern technology today, which is methods online and recording and things of that nature. So with that, inshallah, we'll stop there. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفر واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى وبركاته.
Why?